of the year is crazy, it's busy, everyone has stuff to do. How did you know that MAP testing was coming up so quickly?
Why is Mrs. Eaton crying? Because it's a MAP test.
Hey guys, how do the Mound City Panthers take the MAP test?
This is how we do it. This is how we do it now. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
Okay, now I'm here with Mrs. Hall, and Mrs. Hall knows how important it is that students get adequate rest the night before the MAP test. So make sure that you guys go to bed early, get a lot of sleep. But Mrs. Hall, how are the kids going to be able to get up and make it to school on time the next day, the day of MAP testing?
Well, you need to make sure to tell your parents to.
Okay, Mrs. Forehand, I know that nutrition plays a really big part of performance during MAP tests. What advice can you give to students the day of MAP testing when they're eating their breakfast?
Get yourself an egg and beat it. Have some more chicken, have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried. Just eat it. Just eat it. Just eat it. Just eat it. Oh!
Mrs. Montgomery, MAP testing is such a big, important day. I don't know what I'm going to wear. What are you going to wear?
Yo, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Don't tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. Don't tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
I want our kids to score advanced and proficient on the MAP.
Mr. Eaton, what advice do you have for students taking the MAP test?
Try your best, so everything you can.
Okay, Mrs. Reinig is here with me now, and we were just discussing how difficult the MAP test could be, but that kids need to really show up with a fighting spirit.
Of course.
Can you describe for us what their fighting spirit should look like?
Everybody was fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning.
Miss Shoemaker, tell me about how nervous you are for MAP testing.
His palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. There's vomit on his sweater already. Mom's spaghetti, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting what he wrote down. The whole crowd goes on.
Mrs. Asher and Mrs. Boyd, what advice do you give to students that are worried and nervous about MAP testing?
Oh no, don't worry. Be happy.
Stop, collaborate, and listen. Mrs. Kenny's back with MAP instructions. Did I do it?
Mrs. Osborne, what should students do when they're listening to instructions during MAP testing?
Alright, stop what you're doing, because I'm about to ruin the image and the style that you're used to. I look funny, but yo, I'm making money, see? So yo, world, I hope you're ready for me. Now gather round.
Hey, when a student comes to the word stop in their testing manual, what should they do? MAP testing can get hectic and it can be really stressful. But just remember, stay cool and stay in school.
Hey, we're here with Mrs. Hucks, and she's going to give us some test-taking strategies if you come across the wrong answer, what to do.
You erase it completely.
Push it real good. Push it good.
And now I'm here with Mrs. Graves, and she has some more MAP testing suggestions for you guys to follow.
If you would like to review an answer at a later time, flag it. You may then go back and
their math test and they really have to use the bathroom, what should they do? Okay, I'm here with Mr. Miles, and we're looking for some map test advice. Mr. Miles, what should a student do if they need to use the bathroom during map testing? Mrs. Stanton, what should talkative kids do after they're finished with their map test?
You say this when you say nothing at all.
What should students not touch in between map testing sessions?
You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this.
Mrs. Birch, if a student is very enthusiastic about their answer on the map test and they know they got it right, what should they under no circumstances ever do? Mr. Petty, why do you wear your sunglasses during map testing?
See the answers.
Mr. Osborne and Mr. Messer, what kind of information should students record on the map test? When you find the right answer and you're like, okay, when students are taking the map test, Mrs. Hughes, and they get to a really hard question, why should they never give up?
Too legit! Too legit to quit! Too legit! Too legit to quit!
Okay, we're here with Mrs. Hucks, Mrs. Atkins, and Mrs. Seitz. And students taking map testing, they get really nervous when there's only a certain amount of time left. So what do students need to do when there's only 10 minutes left to go in map testing?
Don't just stand there.
Bust a move.
Hey, Mrs. Reinig.
Yeah?
Why did you want to be a music teacher?
Me? Rock and roll. Put another dime in the jukebox,
Hey,
baby.
Mrs. Reinig, one last question. What's your favorite chord?
Ain't nothing but a G thing, baby.
Mr. Eaton, way back when you were a young boy and you finished up map testing, what was your final wish?
I wish I was a little bit taller. I wish I was a baller.
How do you feel when you're done with map testing? Okay, Mrs. Clifton, what should students do after they're done with map testing? We just talked to Mrs. Clifton. Now, Mrs. Caton, what should we do after map testing is completely over?
This concludes our map test training. Are there any questions?
The Harlem Shake.